Claire.
Hi, Meg. How are
Hello.
you?
I'm good. Did you have a nice Christmas?
I did, thank you. Did you?
Yeah, I did. It was busy. It felt like a lot of different events, like event after event after event, but it was super fun. I mean, I could have Christmas for a full week. I have no complaints, you know? So I would say there were like 3 or 4 days of straight up Christmas parties and things, which was nice.
Yeah, that's nice. Sounds nice. I like Christmas. I like seeing my family. I like having a good time, good dinner, lunch, whatever. But because I always feel that every time I feel like really happy, I still have that little piece of my heart that's like blue. Christmas is always a little bit hard. And so I wouldn't sign for Christmas every day for a whole week.
What makes Christmas hard? What makes you a little blue? Is that just part of your natural self?
Yeah, it's just my baseline is a bit blue. And so I can't ignore that part of me, if that makes sense. And so I don't. Like, it's just like, it's cool, it's fine. But I know that people will want to see the jollier, happier parts of me. And so I need to curate time for me, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of feels like an effort. And so it's like, I prefer the same dinner without the Christmas context, just so that it's like the same people, the same good food, the same good vibe, but without the pressure of having to be happy. I prefer that.
So with Christmas, there's a bit of pressure to be happy.
I think so. Don't you?
I can see that. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's people have higher expectations for Christmas. Like, we should be happy right now because it's Christmas. You know, there's more pressure. I totally see that. So that's my little moon over there in Belgium.
Can't believe it. This is why I dress in mustard yellow and trying to bring some sunshine.
You're just trying. You're like, let me wear yellow.
We do the things we can with what we have. Okay.
Yeah. Well, color therapy is a thing. Maybe you just need to like paint your house with spots of yellow.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm down for that. Actually,
how it works.
I had once in my life, my bedroom was 2 shades, like lemon yellow and like lime green.
Wow.
It's pretty bold choice. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Your little self-expression. That's very cute. I had like a weird sage green and soft pink when I was little, which actually looked kind of nice. And then we weirdly, I speak in plural because I'm a twin and we shared rooms, went towards bubblegum pink. And I'm like, why did we choose bubblegum pink? It was so bright.
You know, the yellow and the green thing, it dates back to me being a teen. It doesn't date back, like nearly officially adult.
Okay.
I don't know why I decided to, I have no idea. I cannot explain where that came from.
I wonder what your parents thought when you're like, I want to paint my room lime green and electric lemonade yellow.
It's my room, so, you know. I think they were just like, whatever, like, you're going to be living with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I don't have to be there. So
much more tame, as you can see now.
You have a nice taupe in the background.
It's actually, it's because it's dark. It's actually like a beige, like it's not white. It's like off-white-y beige color, but it's dark. So looks maybe taupe now.
I don't even know what taupe really is. Maybe I'm wrong. Is taupe? I have to go Google this.
Well, what's the name? Because taupe in French is also the name of an animal, and it's the color of the fur of the animal.
Oh, that's cute.
I don't know if it's cute or not. Because
let's learn French together, folks. Yeah, that looks very taupe to me. Whatever you're in right now.
It's a mole in English.
This is what taupe is showing. That's what taupe looks like.
Yeah, it's like a grayish, brownish, light color. That's how I would describe it.
What animal is it?
It's a mole in English. I asked Google to translate that.
Oh,
So,
so I
we
know
learned something.
French.
This is mole color in the dark.
I'll be like, I love that. Okay.
Welcome to French 101. Next up, recovery.
Yeah. How do you say recovery in French? Is it like recovery?
No, actually, I have not agreed with myself. And it's not like there's like a word, because there's like healing. And because recovery translated literally to me sounds a bit weird. And when I read in French on the topic of eating disorder recovery, they all use like different words. There's not like the word like in English. So
You can invent that.
yes, I can.
Invent it.
Okay.
Find the French word, Anne Claire, and trademark it.
I shall do that in 2023
Okay.
or not. But I'll keep you updated.
Get on that.
Before we get there, though, we got a question.
Okay. Bring it on. Bring it.
Bring it on. So, a gentle soul is asking, why am I slipping or relapsing? And before I want to get into that, I want to start with what is slipping and what is relapsing. And then maybe we can give a bit more context to when that might happen, how that might happen, maybe share a few of our stories and experiences.
Sounds quite lovely.
All right. So what's a slip and what's a relapse, Meg?
Well, first of all, I have to say, I see this get confused a lot. And slipping versus relapsing are very different because it's about almost like the mentality when you are in those spots. So when you've slipped, there's a part of you that's actively trying to prevent that and get out of it. And you want out of it. And so maybe there's like a day where you've slipped and you're like, shoot. I don't want this to happen. I need to get back to my recovery minded self.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people in recovery will say they're relapsing, which sounds so much more severe, right? And permanent. Whereas relapse, in my opinion, is I'm letting myself kind of fall into this place. And I don't care right now necessarily. Maybe I'm a little apathetic to getting out of it, right? Like I don't need to be focused on recovery or get back on the recovery train. I'm here for a while. I'm going to stick here. So it's a little bit different of a place to be. I feel like you probably have more to add to that.
Yeah. I mean, same thing. Like there's a significant difference in like nuance of color here between a slip and a relapse. Like I've always looked at a slip as you had certain goals and something happened, and in a very unplanned, unintentional way, you ended up reaching for behaviors instead of these new things that you've been starting to build and put in place, right? But you are still very much engaged in the process of recovery, and you're still very much connected to those intentions and those goals that you had put in place, right? But a relapse is like, whether because of where you are, because of something bigger than you that is happening to you, means that that whole plan, like that journey, that path that you were trying to like start to walk on and, create for yourself towards recovery is like abandoned. You're like jumping ship. You're like, that's not, either because you're jumping in the water or because something has happened and you were like the sea got really turbulent and you got ejected from the boat.
Yeah, that's a good nuance too that I didn't really make distinct, which is sometimes you jump into the relapse water, other times you get thrown into the relapse water.
But there's like a massive difference, right? And of course, there is such a thing as telling yourself it's just a little slip but actually sort of like wearing, like ignoring the red flags and ending up actually completely in a relapse. Because if you consecutively add a bunch of little slips, you're going to end up in a relapse because you keep betraying those goals and those intentions that you have that are aligned towards recovery, right? So, there is one can lead to the other. However, I find that the state of mind, environmental context, and sort of like the magnitude of what is being done or not done is quite different between both.
Right. Like as a coach, I feel like a slip looks like with a client, for instance, like someone has set goals for that week, or maybe they've been doing really well. And then I get a text from them being like, oh my gosh, I, restricted lunch today and I feel myself like my eating disorder kind of taking over and I'm stressed and I'm talking to my partner how to get back on track. Like when I get a text like that, it's a little slip. And then usually it feels like the next day or the day after that, they're back. They've got their systems in place, trying to get back on the recovery horse.
And that's actually a normal piece of recovery. That's literally where we need to learn something. Like that's what I'm expecting from every single recovery journey. Literally, that's like part of my expectations as a coach. I'm like, oh, okay. Lesson. Yeah, there's something to be learned here.
I like getting texts like that as a coach because I'm like, wow, this means they really don't want to relapse and they're reaching out for help. They're utilizing their resources. Their healthy self is there. It is present, actively fighting against whatever the eating disorder is trying to do. So yeah, I do expect that as well. And like relapse sometimes looks like, oh, they come back and they tell me in session how they've just fallen into an old pattern and there was no reaching out for help that week because part of them wasn't really caring whether or not they got back on track, right? It's like there's
and we might feel that it's still the case in session. We might feel that, there's that apathy that you mentioned, like, I don't care. Like, actually, I didn't do that for like the whole week and it's fine. Like, whatever, like, no big deal. Like, it is like, well, big deal actually, but let's understand where you are. But that might be like, you might already be engaged in that relapse. And again, it might be because of something that has shifted internally. It might be because something has shifted outside of you that is impacting you greatly, right? So I want to make sure that no one is like blaming themselves for whatever's going on in their lives. Mm-hmm. But hopefully this makes sense in terms of the difference between both.
Yes.
Because if we're talking about them, we kind of need to make sure that we know what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want people to think they're relapsing when they're just having a slippery day.
Right. And also, we don't want to like minimize or like magnify things that are just like a normal part of the journey, right? Like I remember some behaviors are like very like yes or no in terms of using them. For example, like purging or binging, like you either did it or you didn't do it. And then you can like not do that for a while. And then it's like you had a really crap day and I'm already entering into examples. And then you end up using a behavior again. That doesn't mean like, boom, it's the end of the world. Everything goes out the window. Let's go into relapse mode. No, like that's what your eating disorder might like, but that's not what this is. So it's important to kind of know for yourself what word to put onto it and to take ownership of what you can still change or choose.
And I feel like people, they think very black and white about those behaviors that they're trying to eliminate. Whereas like, oh, I went 2 weeks without doing my behavior. And then I used a behavior and I'm a failure and now I'm going to spiral. But like the whole goal of recovery is just, I feel like minimize and eventually eliminate, not the whole goal, but that's part of recovery, right? Is like eventually.
But I get it. Yeah. It's so hard. Like I want people to know that we get it. Like I remember, I think I've told you this story. I remember going to see my therapist and having a discussion about. So I was in a phase where I would purge and we had a discussion about stopping that behavior. And she's like, oh no, but we're not talking about like stopping forever. And I was like, I'm not a loser. Like if I put a goal, like it's very black and white, very like it's all or nothing. Like, so I just want people to know, like, we know how hard it is to come to this work with nuance, and sometimes for very good reasons, as in like with very good intentions. Because sometimes I can hear like the healthy self come in session and be like, but it's because I want to stop. And it's like, that's great. But I also don't want judgment to come in when something doesn't go to plan. That's all. Right. So this is the same idea.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I always have to say, like, living in the gray is something you have to learn in recovery. So the fact that you are decreasing using your behaviors over time is a victory, right? Like, use a behavior sometimes, but not all of the time is much better than when you used to use a behavior all of the time.
Also, it's better than going like, I didn't use it for a week and then I use it for 2 weeks straight, than being like spacing it out by one more day every single time. Like you're going to get further faster if you get that time increase every single time by a day or half a day, like depending where you start. If you start at 10 minutes, start at 10 minutes, but you're going to go faster further that way and keep the motivation flowing and that commitment going a lot easier than if it's like every time on or off sort of a thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So interesting. We should do something on cognitive distortions one time. I don't think we've done that too much.
I don't think so, but we probably should.
Okay, so I want to hear about you, Anne Claire, and like when you were going through recovery, what kind of gave you like this vulnerable sense, like, this could be a relapse thing, or this could be triggering for me?
Feelings. Just like any heavy feeling. It was really my kryptonite for the longest time. I still don't love heavy, difficult feelings, don't get me wrong. But in recovery, it really was like each time something would like hit me a bit strong, it would be like 5 steps back until I learned not to let that happen, obviously. But that was heavy. That was really heavy. And I really had to actually learn first to not let myself relapse and rather slip. Like it's crazy, like as a concept, but that's not the understanding I had of that at the time. But when I look back at the work that I was doing with my therapist, I realized that what we started with actually was damage control. It wasn't, let's not use these behaviors or like completely like redirect the course of, my choices and stuff. It was more like, how can we make this slip just a slip and not a relapse? Because, it's easy to say feelings and sometimes they're like feelings for a day, but that's a whole lot harder when the feelings are led by contextual things that are happening to you that you don't actually have control over, in which case that would make the slope just so much slipperier for me. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe I should give an example. Yeah. So like, say I had a particularly stressful week at work and I was working hard and I was basically burning myself out a bit. Potential slip because tired, anxious, overwhelmed, stressed out, don't know what to do with these feelings, emotions, maybe not, probably not even naming them. How can I fix this feeling that I don't want to feel? Use a behavior. Bad idea, right? Like does not work in any way whatsoever. But in very short-term view that you might have in that moment, you're like, that's going to fix it. Slip, because, it was my work context, Things go up, things go down. Like, it wasn't going to be like up like that for the whole year. But if we're talking about that you get really bad news about a loved one's health, well, you're probably in for the long ride because it's rarely just fixed the next day, right? If you're told like this person that you love has like a really bad health issue, cancer, or, I don't know, dementia or something, there's no fixing. It's not going to go down. That was just that could have turned slips into relapses really fast, because it wasn't about putting things in perspective, sleeping a little bit more, and, reaching out for help. There is no one to change that fact. And so that's what I mean by the two in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
That would have been me in the past. And like I said, I'm still not a huge fan of feelings. I mean, I love feelings, but like they're not easy. And it's interesting because when I learned that about myself then, I still know that about myself now, as in I'm not prone to relapsing or slipping because I am recovered from my eating disorder. That's how I call myself, because I know that those behaviors don't feel in any way whatsoever like attractive when shit hits the fan. It doesn't feel like, oh, well, that sounds like a good idea. Like that doesn't happen to me at all. However, I also still know that when things get hard in life, I still use the same sort of like skills and tools to sort of meet myself. And that's a gift from recovery. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in there because it's definitely helping me in life overall now, even though for a while it was kryptonite and slippery.
Absolutely. Well, you learn those things. You learn how to cope with those emotions. And then that's a gift you have for the rest of your life. That's why people who are doing recovery work, you got to think of it. This isn't just something you're doing for a temporary amount of time. You can use these things in other areas of life, which is great. It's very beneficial. And you will move past recovery and you will find that you're using these skills and you are grateful that you had the opportunity to learn these skills where your peers and people you love may still be going through life without those tools.
And this is also where I can see in clients how recovery is going for them. When something outside of their control happens, and unfortunately it does, and I can see them being like, there's absolutely no way I'm doing that because my eating disorder is definitely screaming at me like, here's a solution. And I can see them being like, nope, I refuse to do that. That gives me a piece of information about where they are and what we have built as a foundation. I'm not saying that means that they're recovered because, we're still working on things, but that's a very clear indication of how really grounded and strong the foundation of their recovery is.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's like an advanced skill in recovery is being able to hunker down when things get hard and use, even like keep those tools with you and attempting to use them is an advanced skill. I feel like then just letting everything, all of the sessions, all the things you've done, not even apply or not even attempt to apply what you've been working on when things get hard.
But anyway, I want to hear about you. What was your kryptonite?
Honestly, mine, it's so funny because I'm like, I don't know if I was like completely disconnected from my emotions during this time. When I talked to you, I'm like, my recovery, I was like, must have been like a living robot because it wasn't so much about emotions, like thinking about it now. I know that sounds so weird. It was so looks based for me. Like it would be comparing myself to other people and my size or weighing myself. That was my kryptonite. Like that number was the thing that would indicate, okay, I am going to be using this behavior for this amount of time, so that I can feel this way. So it was like really like my slip ups or what would have caused maybe a slip up would have been something related to the appearance, which is like really sad. But it roots back to probably feelings, obviously, like I'm not good enough, right? I'm not good enough is probably what was coming from that and whatever feelings were there. But I was not very aware of feelings. I don't at all. So again, you can recover without completely doing all the emotional work. I'm an example of that, but you will end up in life doing the emotional work at another time. So
it's like you had to catch up later.
Oh yeah, I was kind of like a lot of my 20s doing the rest of the emotional work. But yeah, so for me, it was definitely that appearance trigger for sure.
And clearly, it's not going to be the same for everyone. And I really want to encourage people to like look at their own lives and what sort of like, what activates you, what triggers you, what sort of shakes your foundations. Put words on that. It's so important to know what makes us the most prone to using unhelpful behaviors, disordered or otherwise unhelpful. Because when you know that, it means that when you sort of observe the context happening to you or you doing a first choice, you can be like, hold on a second. Like, I know this. Like, I've worked on this. I know what this could lead to. And so I can now choose whether I'm sort of going down that path or if I want to do something different about it. Because even though, you know, the origin is different, like for you, it would have been like weighing yourself. For me, it would have been like the feeling stuff.
Yeah.
We both were confronted with something that was basically like really like knocking, I don't know, like, you know, our cup of tea. And we're trying to keep all the recovery in that something's knocking and trying to like get the tea to, you know, splash and sort of like, you know, is this image working?
I like it.
We have to make sure that we know how to be like, oh, okay, if some tea just spills, it's fine, but we're still holding the cup and we're going to continue walking and we're going to look at the thing that just bumped us and be like, how can I don't know, sit down, move further, like create a distance from the thing that keeps bumping into me, like something. And that is similar for you and for me. We both had to figure out what on earth is bumping our cup of tea and how can we avoid spilling our cup of tea completely? And what does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we get stuck in patterns, right? In recovery, where like, you know, those neural pathways are like very set in stone. And so a lot of recovery is like becoming super aware of these patterns, bringing awareness to them, and then thinking, how can I get out of this pattern? What do I need to do differently so that the same results don't keep happening? They say, I know this is like probably an insensitive quote, but they say the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's like a saying. I don't know if that's a French thing too, but in English, they say that. And essentially, I know maybe that's not the best thing to say, but think about what can you do differently so that you end up with different results, so that your tea doesn't keep spilling.
Yeah, and you can do that without a boatload of judgment and shame and blame, by the way. Like, this is you taking responsibility of your actions tomorrow. Doesn't mean you need to tell yourself that you're a failure, that you're never going to get better. Like, that's only digging your hole and keeping your cup tilted and letting the tea spill. Mm-hmm. And it's so important because, again, I know we're speaking about self-compassion every time we speak on these calls and these recordings, but self-compassion is you being like, okay, I'm going to put this cup back up and then make sure that I'm mindful and aware, like radically honest about what's going on, what has bumped into me. And then when I take my responsibilities and sit down and stop letting myself be in the situation where clearly I'm vulnerable to something. But if you add judgment, blame, shame, what you're doing is keeping that cup tilted and be like, oh, it's feeling more. It's like, yeah, because you're behaving like the eating disorder.
Yeah, you can go through the ups and downs in recovery and be a little more compassionate with yourself. And that's why it's good to have a coach, because you and I are always going to be that compassionate voice that maybe you can't tap in for yourself at the moment, but you will be forced to learn at some point in order to get out of this situation.
And believe me, we're still very honest and very direct. It doesn't mean that we, are like too nice and like, sickly sweet voice where it's like, it's okay. That's not what we say. We're like, okay, what happened? Can we create understanding? What is the lesson that we need to learn? What is the thing that we need to put in place to make it easier or better for you to manage the situation, right? I don't want people to have the wrong impression of what that actually means in practice.
Yeah, I think everyone has the wrong idea of what self-compassion is. Like the people who don't like self-compassion thinks it sounds like a mommy like babying you. And that's not always what self-compassion sounds like. Or being a compassionate coach. It's not like, oh, poor baby. I hope you're fine. It's going to be okay. Like, let me pinch your cheeks. It's like, okay, let's think about what we can do differently. And it's okay, right? It's just like having your own back. That's what it is. And I will say that as many times as I need to say that until people start recognizing self-compassion isn't always this cringeworthy thing.
Now, all that being said, we can't know for you, dear human who asked, why am I slipping or relapsing? We can't tell you why that is. I do want to encourage you to be clear about, is this a slip? Is this a relapse? I do want to encourage you to have discussions with your treatment team or to reach out to someone new if that's needed or someone additional if that's needed. And then to get understanding for what's going on. Meet yourself where you are, not where you wish you were. That's not going to work. Try to create understanding for what's going on and for the options that you have for what's next, and get clear on what you actually truly want or don't want. Start from there. We're not going to know for you, but you can figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
I trust that.
Oh, love that. All right. Well, thank you, Anne Claire. This was lovely. I think well done with the vid. Everyone watching, thank you so much for watching. We love you guys. We appreciate you. We are rooting for you and your recoveries. Let us know how you're doing. We always love to hear a comment or a question over YouTube. So thanks for being here, and we will see you guys next time.
See you next time.
Toodaloo.